Hello, Danah from Tel Aviv. Where are you today?
Shalom, Edna. I am in Oxford, UK.
Oh, that's great. 2 years ago, we did an interview, and you were in Oxford, and I was in Tel Aviv. And it seems, unfortunately, that the COVID-19 is still very strong, and we don't travel as much. I guess you don't travel as much either.
I'm still stuck in the UK, but I hope to get back to China in August.
Oh, I will hold my fingers for you. So I would just like to make a little introduction to our viewers. Most of them are managers or students of management or management faculty from the academia who read our magazine called Status. And we have added videoed interviews with our friends from all over the world, this way to make their knowledge accessible to our followers. And I am very lucky that you have been my friend for many years, as we found out today, and that we meet again in a second interview. We did one 2 years ago. And today we are celebrating your new book, which is out only 2 months. It's called Zero Distance, and it has already been downloaded 59,000 times by people from all over the world. And before we talk about this great new book of yours, let me just say a few words about you. Professor Danah Zohar has been my friend. I'm very lucky that she has been my friend for over 20 years now. And she has written, if I remember, 11 books, and they are all great bestsellers. She is both a physicist and a philosopher and an expert on leadership, and mostly on what she herself has developed, the concept of the quantum leader, which is the name of her last book before this one. And I really look forward to a great conversation about this new book of you. And if you want to add something about yourself, which I forgot, could you just add something to my introduction, Professor Danah Zohar?
Well, you might just say that I teach at Tsinghua University School of Economics and Management in Beijing and at the China Art Academy in Hangzhou. And my theory is called quantum management, and we can talk about that as we go on.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's start our conversation about this exciting book of yours. Let's start with the basic question. What is your book about? What is Zero Distance about?
I have been working on quantum management theory for 20 years now, developing it over a series of books. So Zero Distance is, for one thing, the most comprehensive and up-to-date presentation of quantum management theory and quantum leadership. But what's most exciting to me about this new book is that quantum management has been just a theory, which many people were interested in but didn't know how to put into practice. And in this book, I talk about how it has been implemented as a practical business model and been used as the business model of a global Chinese company named Haier. And Haier has then spread it to other companies. So in the book, I'm able to talk about not just the theory, but how several companies, including Haier, GEA Appliances in America, Sanyo in Italy, or in Japan, Candy in Italy, and even the American Army's Green Berets have implemented quantum management as their central organizational model. So the book is really a first in bringing together a new theory with how it can actually be put into practice by companies or any organization.
I will add that in my small management consulting company, I have been implementing it for quite a while, and I am very happy that it has been successful, that this is my way of keeping young people with us, developing their own careers. But I should go back and ask you first, what is quantum management?
That's a very important question. 20 odd years ago, I noticed that traditional management theory, what is called Taylorism, had been inspired by Newtonian classical physics. And so Taylor, copying Newton, who thought the universe was a machine, felt that the company or the organization should be a giant machine. And that came together with Weber's bureaucracy, which also was influenced by Newton. And Taylorism combined with bureaucracy became the management model that almost everybody has been using since the early part of the 20th century. Now, Taylorism, scientific management as it was called, because it is heavily bureaucratic, does not suit the needs of companies in the 21st century. Life today is unpredictable, chaotic, at the edge of chaos. Everything is connected to everything, and there is constant rapid change. And Taylorism, the old management model, was designed for times that were slow, predictable, change was slow. The world was pretty isolated. Companies were islands unto themselves. Countries were islands unto themselves. So when I was asked by Shell 20 odd years ago to give a series of lectures for their senior managers on a new paradigm for management, I looked to quantum physics. I thought it's a good idea to look to physics for your model because physics is very precise. It's been tested by experiment. And Newton's physics had been extended to everything for 300 years. Psychology by Freud, sociology by Comte, economics by Adam Smith, and management by Frederick Taylor. And I thought, what if we look at quantum physics as a new paradigm for all of these fields, a whole new way of thinking? Because where Newtonian physics and those who copied it stressed IQ, rational thinking, logical thinking. They stressed predictability. They stressed order. They stressed simplicity. Quantum physics is all about unpredictability, uncertainty, being at the edge of chaos. Quantum physics tells us everything is connected and everything therefore influences everything. Hence the title of my book, Zero Distance, because quantum physics says there's no such thing as separation. Everything in the universe is connected to everything. So for Shell, 20 odd years ago, I began a series of seminars for their leadership on what management inspired by quantum physics would be like. Now, quantum physics itself, as my critics are quick to point out, has nothing whatever to say about management. It's about elementary particles that you can only see in the laboratory. But quantum physics, because it requires an entirely new kind of thinking, introduced a new paradigm in science. Such a new paradigm that the early inventors of quantum physics, Einstein, Heisenberg, Niels Bohr, Schrödinger, etc., did not understand what they discovered because their thinking was Newtonian. And from a Newtonian point of view, quantum physics, as Einstein said, is absurd, schizophrenic, Alice in Wonderland physics. It makes no sense. And indeed, those early physicists had to look to Chinese thought, the ancient book of the I Ching in China, for a model of what this new quantum thinking was like. And slowly then, our world is becoming more quantum. And all the technology of the 21st century is quantum technology. We live in a world of quantum technology. The silicon chip, which makes the computer, smartphones, smart cities, everything else digital possible, would not have been possible without the knowledge of quantum physics. Also, scientists in biology and complexity have discovered that many systems on a large scale, like our own human bodies, actually depend upon quantum activity in the cells of the body and between cells of the body. So quantum physics no longer only relates to tiny particles in a laboratory. I'm holding it in my hand right now. We're all using it. This Zoom conversation is made possible by quantum physics. In addition to that, the thinking within quantum physics, the paradigm, gives us a new way to think about human social systems, like companies and cities. As complexity scientists have pointed out, complexity theory, which is about living systems, complex adaptive systems, is effectively quantum physics for life. It's living quantum science. And complex adaptive systems follow all the same principles that non-living quantum systems do. And the leading complexity scientists have said that literally we can apply the science of complex adaptive systems, living quantum science, to the way we run our companies, to the way that organic cities grow, to the way that nature is sustainable and evolutionary, and so on. So I felt that this was the basis for a new quantum management theory, how to run companies according to the defining principles of quantum physics, and literally according to the principles of complexity science. And I argue that quantum management theory is not just a new management model, it's the new management paradigm. And within that paradigm, you'll find a lot of attempts at new management thinking, dynamic capabilities, teal organizations, adaptive companies, conscious capitalism, Gary Hamel's new humanocracy. These are all stabs at trying to adapt management thinking to the realities of the 21st century. And I argue these are all partial theories within the overarching paradigm of quantum management theory. So they're all examples of quantum management. The thing about them is they don't give the theory, they just talk about new management practices. And quantum management, if you look at it, puts it in the entire context of where these new models are coming from, why they have something to do about the way the universe and living systems and human social systems work, and then how you can implement it, how you can run your company in a new way. So there, that's a long answer to your short question.
Great answer. Great, great. So let's move from theory to practice. And this is so great about your book, your new book. So how is quantum management implemented in this huge, very successful Chinese company, Haier, which is the story of your book? Yes.
Well, for 14 years since first talking to Shell, I talked to many companies and they were excited by the idea, but no one knew how to implement it. And in 2014, I received an email from Zhang Ruimin, the CEO of Haier in China. Haier is one of China's largest companies, and it's the world's largest domestic appliances company. And in his email, Mr. Zhang thanked me for my work and said he had used my quantum management ideas in designing the Haier's new management model, the Rendan Yehe management model, which they had implemented successfully in practice at Haier. And he invited me to come to China to meet him, to speak to and meet senior leaders at Haier, learn about what they had done. So much to my surprise, I learned that a Chinese company had implemented my work. And I went to Qingdao and met Mr. Zhang, who I learned, again to my surprise, had been translating all my books ever since 1990 into Chinese. And I then discovered how Haier was implementing these ideas. And in many subsequent trips to China and to other companies, I've learned that other companies like GEA Appliances in America, which is owned by Haier, have implemented the Rendan Yehe management model. Sanyo in Japan and Candy in Italy have implemented it. Even the US Army's Green Berets have implemented it. And I studied this very closely, of course, and in Zero Distance was able to write in detail a blueprint for how you implement quantum management. Step one is you get rid of bureaucracy, hence the title Zero Distance. Zero Distance model is the English name for Hayer's Rendan management model. Because Zhang Remin's idea was that in an interconnected world, everything inside a company should be closely interconnected. And the company should be closely interconnected with its customers, its users. There should be no distance within the company or between the company and its customers. Quantum theory and complexity science also talk about self-organization. And Hayer thought, in addition to getting rid of bureaucracy, they cleared out all the middle managers. They got rid of 10,000 jobs and said to those middle managers, you can become entrepreneurs in our new model, or we will help you find employment elsewhere. And about half of them stayed, and the other half, they helped find other employment. And to introduce self-organization, Hayer divided a company of 80,000 employees up into small teams of no more than 20 people each, called micro enterprises. And there are now 4,000 of these micro enterprises within Hayer. The company has become a company of companies. And each of these small micro enterprise teams is completely independent and self-organizing, a company in its own right. The head of each micro enterprise is the CEO of his own company. These companies have the advantage of startups because they are tiny and can come up with their own products. They have their own customers. They do their own design, their own research. But because they are part of Hayer, they're serviced by platforms of the large global company. So they combine the advantages of large company service with startup flexibility and creativity. And anyone, a customer at Hayer, you or I, can go to Hayer and say, I have an idea for a new micro enterprise. And if you can sell it to Hayer and to some backers, you become part of the Hayer family. You become a Hayer micro enterprise. You keep most of your own profits, but you pay Hayer a percentage of your profits for their platform services. And because of the absolute freedom of what you can do, Hayer is now no longer just selling domestic appliances. They own 11 hospitals and are in healthcare, and have put the Rendan management model in practice in hospitals. They are in real estate, they are in finance, they're in agriculture. And 2 years ago, they developed the ecosystem model. They noticed that people who want to buy a refrigerator for their kitchen also want to buy a microwave, a cooker, an electronic mixer, etc. So they began to offer scenario packages. Now, each of these products was made by a different micro enterprise. So they said, form an ecosystem and cooperate. Then they discovered that, for instance, on people's balconies, they might want a washing machine and a drying machine, but they might also want an exercise bike and a barbecue machine. So Hire began to form ecosystem partnerships between their micro enterprises and completely other companies, sporting companies, companies that make barbecues and picnic equipment. So Hire today is a giant ecosystem, both internally and externally. And in this entire ecosystem, each micro enterprise heading the ecosystem partnership is directly communicating with customers. And the customers, therefore, become co-creative partners in product development because there's constant feedback. We've given you this, but what more would you like? Or how would you like your product to be different? So constantly, with only 24-hour turnover, the micro enterprises are adapting, creating new things, and the customers are now part of the company. They're like employees of the company. And if a customer thinks of a new micro enterprise, he'll become the CEO of a Hire micro enterprise. Now, this is very quantum because quantum physics tells us that any system has many possibilities. Any quantum system is a superposition of different outcomes. It can be wave-like, it can be particle-like, it can be here, it can be there, it can be now, it can be then. These micro enterprises are a materialization of that many possibilities. There's no end to the possibilities Hire micro enterprise ecosystems can explore. It also spreads the risk because you've got 4,000 micro enterprises. If one or two fail, the company doesn't suffer. And the people from that failing micro enterprise then are reabsorbed and join other micro enterprises, or they start something else entirely new. So it completely does away with the risk involved in innovation because Hire doesn't have just one product and one team. It has thousands of products and teams. And the risk is spread. It's also very quantum because quantum physics and complexity science says everything is connected to everything. There is zero distance. And there is no distance between the ecosystem partners in Hire system of micro enterprises. They see each other every day or on the phone or on email communication constantly. No distance. You don't have to go through a middle manager to get permission to make a decision or to spend some money. It's entirely up to you. And that's the complexity theory of self-organization. Everything is self-organizing. The entire giant company is self-organizing. Every team within it is self-organizing. And this has been fabulously successful. So during COVID, when many companies were suffering terribly, Hire and its friendly companies like GEA in America and Sanyo in Japan were making huge profits. They grew. For one reason, because each of these small micro enterprise teams has its own suppliers. And there was a supply problem with COVID. Well, if I have a supply problem in my enterprise, I just call my buddy in another micro enterprise and say, can I use your supplier? So they had no supply problems. They had no customer problems. They had no delivery problems. And they thrived. So it dealt with this major blow that COVID was to standard companies in a wonderful way. And the Green Berets, how they used it successfully was originally when they were in Iraq fighting Al-Qaeda, they went in there with standard military strategy and formation. Great big battalions commanded from central headquarters. You want to do something in the field, you need permission from a chain of senior officers. And you're a big, unwieldy, top-down controlled fighting squad. And Al-Qaeda were beating the hell out of them. And they looked at this and said, how can we be beaten by this ragtag mob of loosely organized, unprofessional, small teams of terrorists who communicate by runners, human runners going between them? And they realized that it's because Al-Qaeda was completely self-organizing. Small teams of terrorists working independently, able to fight on the spot, no need for senior command, no need for communication. They just did what the situation called for. So the Green Berets adopted this quantum management model. They broke the Berets up into small fighting units that were independent, that didn't need central command control, that were closely communicating with each other and with central headquarters. But if the communication system broke down, their officers knew what to do. And they could then be as agile and adaptive as Al-Qaeda. And then they were successful. So that's how it's implemented. That's why it's quantum. And that's why it's successful.
Wow. You know, as I told you, I am so lucky that I have learned from you for so many years and have implemented these ideas. And I know that it works in my company. But I would like to ask you, why is it so slow to be adapted by everybody? We have proofs of concept that it works. So why?
Reasons. One is in the quantum management model and in the Rid of Bureaucracy implementation, the CEO gives up all control. He doesn't command everything from his C-suite office. And a lot of managers are just freaked out by that. What? Give up all control? It'll be chaos. If I don't tell these people what to do, they won't know what to do. So they don't trust their employees. They don't trust the self-organization. And they don't want to give up their own power. 10,000 companies a year visit hire, many of them American. Most of the Americans say, oh, what a great idea, but it will only work in China. It will never work in America. And that's why I wrote about GEA, General Electric Appliances, and the Army's Green Berets. They're both very American, and it works just fine. It's a question of a mind shift, a paradigm shift on the part of senior management to accept that you can trust your workforce, that your workforce has potential that you have not been tapping because you've just been treating them like robots who do what they're told. You feel that if you don't run your organization by fear and control, everything will go chaotic and you'll have a mess. You've got to be convinced to give a try to self-organization and to giving up your own power. And when the quantum CEO gives up his power, he has to become a different kind of leader. And that's what my book, The Quantum Leader, was about. What is a quantum leader? Well, he's no longer a guy who's running everything or a woman who's running everything. So what does he or she do? What's his role, her role? It's to be a role model. It's to be an inspiration. It's to be the glue that holds the company together. It's to be the person who designs an integrating central operational system that gives all these micro enterprises principles that guide them, not rules, not commands, principles. This is what we're trying to achieve. These are our values. This is what success means. That's all they say. And then they leave it completely up to the self-organizing teams. But a lot of CEOs take pride or admired for being absolute shits. They're not nice people. And that gets them credit. You know, he's a real bastard. He's tough. He's a good businessman. Well, the quantum leader is not a real bastard. He's got to become a model in both his personal life and his business life, zero distance, of a good human being, a good man, a good person. To be an example that upholds the values that a quantum organization has. Values of quality, good service, contribution to the community, as well as to the shareholders, respect for employees, as well as for senior managers. And so the quantum leader, the quantum CEO, becomes a major figure of moral authority, not command and control authority. And that requires a lot of work on themselves. It requires self-development, leadership development. I think a quantum CEO is a well-read person, knows a little bit about everything, not just management, knows a bit about science, knows a bit about systems science, knows a bit about the arts, about philosophy, etc. In China, this is called being a Confucian gentleman. And in China, a quantum CEO is a Confucian gentleman, a well-rounded, well-educated, learned, moral exemplar to those whom he leads. So it's a big change for existing CEOs, and that's why it's slow to take on.
I absolutely agree. And you know, it occurred to me just now as we are having this great interview with you, that at least in our military, they use the word distance. Distance is, of course, using the word distance, but you know, with a Hebrew sound to it, distance. And they believe that when they get the young people into the military, they have to put a lot of emphasis on distance, because otherwise they are not going to get disciplined soldiers. And to read in the book and to hear from you that even in the American military, they are experimenting with it, is just lovely. I love the idea. I never liked the concept of distance, of distance.
The Israeli temperament is well suited to this Rendanoy management model that the Green Berets are using, because Jews don't like to take orders from anybody.
Yes.
And some of the Israeli army's famous victories have been achieved simply because command units in the field ignored orders. So when, I don't remember whether it was Dayan or Sharon was charging up the Golan Heights in the Six-Day War, Central Command said, do not try to take the heights. And Sharon or Dayan said, I can't hear you, and took the heights. And the same thing happened in the Sinai. I think it was Diane in the Sinai and Sharon at Golan. And again, Diane was told, don't try to take the whole Sinai, it's too much. And he just said, the radio is broken, I can't hear you. And he captured the Sinai. And that is the Israeli temperament. And this quantum management Rendon-Yai model is really very Israeli. Because every Jew thinks he's a general.
I fully agree with you. I myself, I don't like to get orders from anybody, and I don't like to give orders to anybody. But it seems that even in Israel, it is not that easy. People love the bureaucracy because it makes them feel safer, just as you said. They are not courageous enough to let go and experiment with the concepts of self-organization. And
what motivated Zhang Ruimin at Higher to develop this model was that as a young man during China's Cultural Revolution, he was forced to go work in a factory in a rural district. Very young man, working with other young people. And he said the young people had ideas about how the factory could run more effectively. But their boss said to them, shut up, I don't want to hear your ideas. You're not being paid to think, you're being paid to do what you're told. And Mr. Zhang said he vowed to himself then, someday I will found a company where people are allowed to think. Because he believes, rightly in my opinion, every employee has infinite potential. And if you release that potential, you are releasing creativity and innovation. And if you stifle that potential, you are losing all that creativity and innovation. And it was to have a company where people could be free to think and be creative and make decisions that inspired him to design this model. And if you understand anything about human beings, it's obvious in Israel. Every Jew has potential. Every Jew has ideas. Every Jew has better ideas than the prime minister and the general. He knows it. We'll free them. Let them have their ideas. And it will not only be a more Jewish state, but it'll be a more quantum state and a more quantum army.
Yeah. Wow. I loved it all. And I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for a very inspirational conversation. I look forward to next time. We will find some other good reason. You are so creative. You always come up with new books and new ideas. And I know that you would love to have zero distance with our readers. So we will share it so that if people want to write to you, to ask you questions, etc., I know that you will be available. I know because you always answer me, and I have a lot of gratitude for that.
Please give your listeners my email, because one thing that is disturbing me about the book right now is that 59,000 people have read it, and I don't know who they are or where they are or what they do. And it gives me an empty experience as an author. I like to hear from my readers. I like to know what they thought of the book. I like to answer their questions. So if people who download or purchase the book have thoughts about it, I would love them to contact me, but by email, please.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. We will definitely do that. And I wish you in these still times of COVID, good health And I wish you that you can go back to visit your friends in China, and maybe one day to come and visit us in Israel, so that we will have a zero distance from you, not only electronically, but face to face as well. Thank you, Danah, very much, and we will be in touch. Thank you
Thank
very
you, Edna,
much.
for the opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.